feet of cord to put into this design is not going to go looking for a yardstick or any other kind of measure. She's going to hold this to her nose and extend her nose. You're shaking your head because you know this measurement, to the end of her arm. Now, that means that she's going to be about my size, but I'll tell you what, in the sweatshops of East LA, most of the women are about our size. The idea of having a new, or different method of a process that takes it away from a strict analytic measurement or procedure that may be called for in the business world, in the scientific world, in the academic world, is innovation and an entrepreneurial spirit, making a change with what you have to figure out the answer to your question. I just wanted to open with that so that we could expand our idea of what being an entrepreneur really means. You may certainly take that idea, have a new invention, and be able to move with it and start a company, or you may just get the idea and sell it. So that there are many different definitions, and I wanted to bring that point home in a graphic way just to open today, and I'll talk more later.
Well, first of all, it's great to be here today. We heard Glenn talk about how hard it is for Americans to pronounce his Latino name. Now imagine how hard it is for me to be a Latino with a German name and last name. So I go through the same thing whenever somebody tries to pronounce Erich Kreidler in Spanish. Now going back to the original topic, why is it that the entrepreneurial spirit is so important for us here, especially now? It's because an entrepreneurial spirit brings three fundamental things to the table. The first one, somebody with an entrepreneurial spirit takes action. I think somebody said, no dejes para mañana lo que puedes hacer hoy. Somebody with an entrepreneurial spirit has that fire in the belly, has to get things done today. In fact, a true entrepreneur knows that if he or she doesn't get things done today, he or she may not be eating tomorrow. Second, and this is related to the not being able to do it tomorrow. An entrepreneur, somebody with an entrepreneurial mind, thinks like the street vendor. What does that mean? It means that you go back to your customer, you relate to them, you talk to them, you stay as close as possible from the action. And that enables you to make all sorts of both tactical and strategic changes to the things that you do. You're not behind, call it an umbrella of 20 different layers away from where things are happening. And it gives you all that circular vision that Glenn was talking about. The third piece, and it's also related to the first two, is somebody with an entrepreneurial spirit is willing to take calculated risks. Remember, calculated risks, not just any risk for the sake of taking them. That means, if you're just taking risks for the sake of taking them, that means gambling. Somebody who's taking calculated risks has that pulse for what's going on with the market. And by knowing what's going on with the market, you can place your bets. And chances are that you're going to do just fine. Again, because you are in touch with reality. You're in touch with what needs to happen. And on top of that, you have that fire in the belly that makes you get into action and get things done. Just think of it. If you're in any company, small, large, if your employees, if the people who work with you, if your boss, anybody possesses those three qualities, I would say, I feel so sorry for your competition because those guys are in so much trouble, you're going to be impossible to beat. How would you beat somebody who takes action, moves fast, is in touch with the market, in touch with the customers, and on top of that, makes calculated risks, anticipating what could happen tomorrow? Extremely powerful.
Boys, it's tough to follow now. To me, entrepreneurship is someone who has no boundaries. Is able to look at the same image that I'm looking at, but you see something different. And I was taking a couple of notes here. It's imagination. You know, you give a child a box. In their world, that box is something else. It's a castle. And that's what entrepreneurship is all about. Can you push the boundaries of your imagination to create a new product, solve a problem? And when I think about entrepreneurship in the last 10 years, I think of companies like eBay, Google, Facebook, MySpace. I mean, those folks took an existing space. I mean, Facebook did not create a new technology, just took advantage of a system out there called the internet and created basically a digital book. And that's the imagination behind that, you know, that entrepreneurship. The no boundaries, I think, is as Eric mentioned, they have no fear of risk. They're willing to try. Alan talked about Kinko's, and that gentleman, before he started Kinko's, had started 11 dry cleaners, had failed every single time. And the only reason Kinko's got started because he got tired of going to Thrifty to photocopy his business plan. And he said, you know what, here's an opportunity. No boundaries, no risk. So to be entrepreneurship is thinking outside the box, you know, having an imagination and taking a risk.
Thank you, Louis. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Joe. You heard a little bit about my book just prior to lunch, Latino Link, Building Brands Online with Hispanic Communities and Content. And it's full of case studies about Hispanic leaders or leaders in marketing who've really effectively reached out to the Hispanic audience and essentially new ways of thinking or new ways of thinking without boundaries or to quote Anita, you know, new methods or processes. And just in kind of getting ready to make this an interactive session, I'd like to point out two friends back here who were helpful in putting all my research together in the book. First one's Erica Nuno, and one of the questions a lot of people ask is, how do you manage a personal brand online? You know, that's a totally new way of communicating. That's how do you do that? And one of the artists at Universal Music, where Erica works, Larry Hernandez, really effectively used YouTube and MySpace to get his message out and to really create a following, both starting in Mexico, but then expanding into a new market, into the U.S. Hispanic market. And then I also talked a little bit about Ford and what they did with AOL Latino, and Miguel Ferrer is here today. They worked with Ford, and you know, as we all know, the media business is totally changing, and you know, Ford worked with AOL Latino as a content development partner. Again, a totally new way of thinking about how to do something since the media business is totally changing. So, entrepreneurs here right among us, and with that, I'll pass it over to Midi.
So for someone who works in PR, I really sure do hate the spotlight, so my apologies if I get nervous, which I probably will. I am an actual traditional entrepreneur. Let me tell you my story. Growing up, my mother always said to take office jobs. When I was 14 and I started to mill about and wanted to get some extra money, you know, I told her, Mom, I want to work at the Gap when I'm 16 or 15. She's like, no, usted trabaja en una oficina. Because she wanted me to learn office culture backwards and forwards. So I took the receptionist job after school and high school. Then I took the administrative position, assistant position in college for a law firm. And eventually I became a jack of all trades at that firm. They had me doing, you know, bookkeeping and the lawyer's schedule and this and that. And so my role expanded. Then I jumped to a magazine in South Florida. And again, because I was so well tuned to office and what the needs of my boss was, I ended up doing accounting and collections. I was placing collection calls for ad folks who hadn't paid for their advertisement. I eventually started designing the ads that were placed in the publication. I started